So ironically, this problem started with a knocking, which if you know these vehicles, you'd know that they are pretty big. They're quite big compared to anything else on the road. So they go through bushings and control arms and other things pretty quickly, and usually that's not the most expensive fix either. It's normally quite a good fix. A knocking from an engine would be very expensive, but that's not what this was. Set the scene, I was in France and I'd been to meet some of the base jumpers on my road trip. We'd had a bit of bad weather come in and they were going to take a day off. In my day off, I thought I'd go down to a river which was down a steep bank. So I've gone down the bank, set up, had some lunch there, gone for a swim in the river because it was nice and warm. Then on coming back out from the river and up this steep bank, I hit the bank quite hard and firm. It wasn't long after that I started to get a knocking sound while I was turning. What a spot as well, by the way. Have a look at this view here. Amazing. Back to the story. I had decided to full commit, continue with the road trip until it was done and then fix the knocking. On investigation, one of the front wheels was wobbling a little bit. Rightly or wrongly, I put that down to a front wheel bearing, which I did end up fixing, and that was not the problem. And this is where the hammer comes into the story, because when I fixed this problem originally, I could not get this front wheel bearing off. It was seized on so badly that I took to TikTok to find how I'm supposed to get this off, and the consensus was unequivocally a hammer. Now you can see from this that I tried all sorts of weird and wonderful things to fix this, and these did not work. There was enough pressure to crack the brake disc that I was using to push off. The hammer was the way and it worked. However, that did not solve the knocking, which persisted. Now, it didn't take long because there couldn't be much else that it could have been for me to then figure out that it was an inner track rod, which I then changed, which solved the issue. However, another problem and another bump in the road, I only did one side, and that's because one of the hub nuts on the other side, where I would have changed both bearings to do them at the same time, because that's desirable, I couldn't get the hub nut off. And this is where we find ourselves now, because I've now bought a breaker bar after a long amount of time and a blowtorch, and I'm not going to take no for an answer from this hub nut this time, because I want to even out the bearings so they're both the same on each side. Now the bearings, I've kept the old ones, you can see them here. There's nothing wrong with them, it was just the inner track rod that was wrong. And recently what's prompted this is I've started to get the same knocking again, and when I've checked it, the inner track rod on the other side, as expected, is gone again. Now this job was such a nuisance, and I mean an absolute nuisance, so much so that I obviously went to TikTok and got a consensus on how was best to fix this, that I thought I'll document this as a way to help people, because if you're getting a knock-in from your Land Rover and you think it's one thing, it might not be that thing. So make sure you diagnose it properly and don't be like me and just buy the parts anyway and then not be able to do the actual things that you're supposed to do, and then not fix the problem that you were there to fix in the first place. I've said this in my other videos, but I'm not a mechanic. I know what I'm doing marginally so, and I'm learning as I go. Do not take this by any means for a how-to video, but this is more of a this is what I did video. And the first thing that I wanted to do was disconnect the battery, because if I'm going to be hitting this Land Rover with a hammer, I don't want to set the airbags off. Also, this is the problem I was experiencing. It's like the wheel is a bit loose. However, this is the culprit, the inner track rod that sits inside this boot, which I'll need to take the wheel off to access. Oh, and whoever said that air suspension is not reliable, still on its original factory air suspension from 2006. This is the track rod end. But I'm going to tackle this hub nut first while the brakes are still on, so that I can fit this nice new bearing and this nice new hub nut. I'm going to let that soak for a while, and it's time that I learn from past mistakes and put some gloves on so that I don't damage my hands like last time. Another tip I got from TikTok was give it some heat. I then thought I'd put my new breaker bar to some use. I used the jack handle as an extension to give me some extra leverage. I weigh about 100 kilos, so all my body weight is getting used to push this around, and it's still not budging. Finally, it went. That was a long time coming. That defeated me last time, but it's not defeated me this time. I came a little bit more prepared. I then got the brake caliper out of the way and bungeed that up as not to damage it. Brake pads off, and then it's a 21mm socket which goes onto the back of this mounting bracket to be able to get that off. These could be quite stubborn as well, so I'm happy to have my breaker bar and makeshift extender and put that to some more use on these. I then took the caliper mounting bracket off, and so long as the retaining screw is out, the disc can then come off. Also good to take the ABS sensor out of the way so that it doesn't get damaged when you're hammering. More soak and clean. Then it was time to remove the track rod end. Top tip here, make sure you take the nut all the way off before you release the tension in the ball joint. Previously I made the mistake of not doing that, and then I had to jack up the track rod end to create enough tension so that I could undo the nut fully without it spinning. Then there's a locking nut to loosen off. I then put the nut back on to give it a gentle tap to loosen off the tension to be able to then pull this out. You might notice that in all of my videos I'm wearing a flannel shirt, one of these. Now you probably fall into one of two categories. You've either got loads of flannel shirts or you've got none at all. And if you've got none at all, then I'm here to help. Scroll down a bit and it'll say claim your free shirt here. A wardrobe hack discount code where when you buy one shirt you get your second one free, so that when your flannel shirt's dirty, like mine, if you've got some oil on it, then you can just wear your other one that's a different colour. Back to this front wheel bearing though, which comes as like a hub assembly held on with 4 bolts. These are quite stubborn as well because they're sort of rusted on the end. So those 4 bolts have been a bit of a pig, I'm not gonna lie. They're very difficult to get out. Good job that I heeded my own advice to wear gloves, because there I am cranking away on this bottom right one as you're looking at it. My hand slips and I smashed my hand off this dust cover, which I was going to take off, but the bolts, the first one that I tried, which looked like the best one, was rounded and it's rusted badly. So I thought I'm going to try and get away with not having to deal with these and just leave this dust cover on. It came back to bite me, literally. I've smashed my thumb again, the second time, but this time I'm wearing gloves, so it's not quite as bad. I'm sure this Land Rover is trying to hurt me in every way every time I work on it. I'm just trying to help it live a healthy life, and it's just trying to hurt me all the time. I put a bit of timber behind the hub assembly just to stop it flapping around, and then it was time to take some revenge and smash the hell out of this, which was therapeutic to say the least. That went considerably smoother than the last time I did this. That's the thing that didn't need to be fixed, now fixed, and matching the other side. Time to move on to the thing that actually does need to be fixed, which is this. I'm running this Land Rover on a budget, so I'm reusing everything. The only thing that I've bought is the inner track rod. I also don't have a spanner big enough, hence using these pipe grips. This must be the most amount of packaging that I've ever seen for a single part. A huge box just for this small rod. This is how it should be, unable to move by hand, unlike the old one which was flapping around freely. I used the old track rod as a reference to get this roughly back in line. And then everything went back in the same way it came out. Including this nice new bearing, which now matches the other side. I used a plank of wood just to create tension in the track rod end so that I could tighten the nut up. It does need to be under tension, otherwise the nut will spin the ball joint. Nip this up for now, although we'll be going to a garage to be properly aligned. Disc back on, caliper mounting bracket back on, pads back in, caliper back on, including the brake wear sensor. Then time to torque up the new hub nut, which is supposed to be, I think, something like 1,000 Newton meters of force. I don't have a torque wrench that would go that strong, so I just made it as tight as I could physically go. The bar was literally flexing. Not sure what this is called exactly, but I used a flathead screwdriver just to make sure that this is hammered in where it's stepped so it doesn't spin, or it can't spin in the event that it's not torqued up tight enough. If you know what that's called exactly, then let me know in the comments. Then wrestled this tyre back on, ready to do the one thing that you do not want to forget if you're doing this job DIY. As soon as you touch anything to do with the steering, which I didn't know, you need to then recalibrate the steering angle sensor, which I had a bit of a faff with this. I went around the garages, somebody quoted me 250 quid, and a Land Rover specialist as well at that, but I didn't know at the time that this product was capable of recalibrating the steering angle sensor. I don't know why, I just wasn't aware of it until someone said to me that you should be able to do it with this. However, now I do understand it, and I've got it fixed before it's even became a problem, because I'm not even going to go off the drive in this vehicle before recalibrating the steering angle sensor. Last time I made it as far as 2 miles down the road before everything went crazy and it dropped down onto its bump stops, and I had a major problem wondering what the hell was going on. I should say as well that this will need a front wheel alignment by a garage. After it's been to the garage, it'll need recalibrating again. I'm just doing this now so I don't have a problem driving to the garage and it drops down onto its bump stops, which is what happened last time.